G'day my fellow media collectors, I'm Troy and today we're looking at The Invincible Iron Man is an animated film that was produced by Marvel Studios, Starburst Entertainment and Lionsgate Entertainment, and it was released direct to video on the 23rd of January 2007. The movie is part of the Marvel Animated Features, which is a series of 8 direct-to-video animated superhero films made by MLG Productions, a joint venture between Marvel Studios and Lionsgate Entertainment. The films include both Avengers movies, Doctor Strange, the Sorcerer Supreme, Next Avengers, Heroes of Tomorrow, Hulk vs. Planet Hulk, and Thor, Tales of Asgard. This DVD has a runtime of 83 minutes. It was first released on DVD on the 23rd of January 2007. And it was distributed by Lionsgate Entertainment. The Invincible Iron Man follows billionaire inventor Tony Stark as he uncovers an ancient Chinese prophecy while working on a major construction project. After being captured by rebels and gravely injured, Stark builds a powerful suit of armour to escape. Upon returning home, he refines the suit to become Iron Man and takes on the mantle of the hero to stop the mystical forces of the resurrected Mandarin, who threatens to unleash a centuries-old evil upon the world. Can Iron Man defeat these ancient magical elemental guardians and stop the Mandarin from rising again to wreak havoc on the world? Now, look, the scripts for this feels like a missed opportunity from really start to finish. It takes a bold concept that aims to deliver a blend of ancient mythology and modern technology and reimagining Tony Stark's origin with this mystical twist, but instead kind of squanders it with some real clunky dialogue, some flat character development and some very sluggish pacing, which makes for a not so cohesive film. I feel like the script leans too heavily into generic prophecy cliches and misses the opportunity to explore some deeper themes like destiny, responsibility, and the clash of modern ideals with tradition. Look, it suffers from some pacing issues, with the first act dragging on a little bit too much, spending too much time at the dig site and explaining the prophecy. Then, fast forward to the third act and it feels rushed, with the character's resolution happening really quickly and without much emotional payoff. And our villain, the Mandarin, who is, well, one of Iron Man's most iconic foes, is turned into a vague mystical presence with no real personality or motivation, which really diminishes the impact and threat of the Mandarin, as he's made to be less of a villain and more of a backdrop. Now look, at times the dialogue feels a bit stiff and overly expositional, especially during scenes where the script attempts to explain the mythology or Stark's transformation, and I think a few more passes at the dialogue in this script could have been beneficial to the film, with some more natural and some engaging exchanges. In the end, this script for this film does show some creative ambition by trying to blend a kind of like an East meets West theme, but I feel it just doesn't quite stick the landing for me. It provides, look, it's a serviceable Iron Man origin story introducing Iron Man to the world before the Iron Man 2008 movie was released, but it just ends up suffering from a lot of uneven pacing and underdeveloped characters, making this hardly an interesting alternative for fans that don't really quite reach the narrative polish of the usual Marvel standard that we've come accustomed to. So look, for that, I'm probably going to give it an 11 out of 30. So for this film, while it's not a direct adaptation from the Iron Man comic books from Marvel Comics, the film really does draw inspiration from Iron Man's OG origins, especially his transformation from weapons manufacturer to hero after the life-changing captivity moment. With the movie shifting the settings to China this time around and wraps Tony's capture and transformation into this larger mythical narrative involving ancient temples and elemental guardians, and really simplifying this, making it more about fulfilling a prophecy and confronting this mystical destiny than purely internal moral awakening rooted in guilt over his weapons manufacturing and his personal responsibility to the world. Now look, I can't let this slide, as the rework of the Mandarin, who is an absolute classic Iron Man villain, traditionally portrayed as this tech-wielding warlord with 10 alien-powered rings, but instead for this film they turn him into a sort of mythical spirit slash ancient force, if you know what I mean, with his personality being almost non-existent, and the rings are replaced with elemental warriors linked to this prophecy. Yes, sorry, but no thanks.
No sir, I don't like it.
For me, look, I do have one gripe with this movie, and that is the conflicting animation styles from traditional to 3D CGI. I find the mix is always noticeable, like you can tell the difference, and for me, I find it very off-putting. I'm very much a stick with the one style throughout the movie, as in this, I don't think the 3D stuff really adds anything, and it does, to tell you the truth, it doesn't look that great. Everyone looks very stiff, very, it just looks pretty ordinary.
I totally agree.
Now for the cast, I will just grab them from me, and depending on how up on your voice actors you are, most of the cast is pretty well B-grade voice actors who have done mostly video games, B-grade movies, and the occasional cartoon or movie voice work. It kind of looks like these people were hired for, let's say, not their talent, but how much it would cost to have them in, if you know what I mean. There are also no real names here that I can recognise, but there is one person I did know on this list, and that is John McCook. And that's only as I have seen him on The Bold and the Beautiful daytime soap. But just to clarify, I've seen the ads and bits and pieces on TV. I don't actually watch that show.
That sounds like a lie, doesn't it?
So look, let's get into a few of them, and of course we'll start with Mark Warden as Tony Stark. Well, he brings a calm, authoritative tone to the character, but his performance is really lacking any charm, sarcasm, and emotional nuance fans might have come to expect from the genius billionaire. It's just a bit flat on his delivery, and there's little energy or personality behind it. Now we have Rodney Salisbury as James Rhodey Rhodes. For me, Salisbury gives Rhodey a steady and supportive presence, though he isn't given much to do beyond delivering exposition and spending his time worrying about Tony. He hits all the right tone of professionalism and being grounded, but the performance feels more functional than dynamic. Gwendolyn Yeoh as Lee May. Well, Yeoh does her best with the little that she's given, but the performance should be compelling with a conflicting character caught between duty and emotion. But Yeoh's voice work never really sells the struggle, if you know what I mean, and instead just sounds distant and flat. Fred Taskascore, I hope I got that right, as the Mandarin / elementals. Fred is utterly wasted here. The Mandarin is written like a vague ancient evil with no real personality or presence, and sadly the performance kind of reflects that. Sure, it's loud and commanding, but ultimately it's also uninspiring. The rest of the supporting cast are serviceable at best, with their lines delivered with little energy. It feels like a bit more of a table read rather than a finished product, with a lot of the characters sort of almost blending together vocally with no real standout performances or, God, really any memorable moments to speak of. Look, overall, the voice acting in this film is just a little bit underwhelming at best, and it lacks the spark and emotion and charisma that could have elevated what was actually a bit of an average story. But instead, it sinks the film into mediocrity, and with that, I'm definitely going to have to give this a 6 out of 20. Okay, as we look at the disc and case now, I find the artwork on the front there really stands out. It looks really good. It really captures you, gets you in and goes, oh, look at this, what's in there. Okay, that's pretty standard fare for the side there. And for the back, not too bad too. Like, it looks pretty good. It gives you some great artwork. Funnily enough, all this artwork doesn't really represent what's going on inside, funnily enough. But yeah, and then this, the disc, look at that, a color disc no less, with a different picture, which is always a bonus. I do like that. Look, this is pretty standard fare from Marvel around that time. I do like the look of it, and I think it does look good, but it could have been a little better as well. Look, because it is pretty standard, and look, no offense, it is a bit misleading to say the least. I am going to give this a 6 out of 10. Okay, so there are a few special features on this DVD, which include an alternate opening scene, the Origin of Iron Man featurette, Iron Man concept gallery, Iron Man armory gallery, and a sneak peek at the Doctor Strange Sorcerer Supreme animated movie. While nothing groundbreaking here, it's a bit of the standard fare when it comes to these, as far as the special features go anyway. Now, for the galleries, sure, they're nice if you're into that sort of thing, and the alternate opening scene, well, it kind of shows why they went the way they did in the movie, as this alternate scene was just a long-winded exposition dump. Now, the Origin of Iron Man featurette, well, interesting is the usual thing, where the filmmakers give themselves a big old pat on the back and tell themselves how great their work was that they have done on updating Iron Man's origins from the comics. And there's also this reimagined vision of Mandarin, which actually for me were probably the two worst things about this movie. Go figure, eh? Look, there's some interesting stuff here, but special, not so much. For me, I'm going to give that probably a 3 out of 10. Okay, as I bring up the Rotten Tomatoes scorecard, as you can see, the critics came in with, no score there. Okay, let's have a look at the audience score. That came in at, 46%. So look, let's put all of this into perspective, okay? So there was only one critic review, and he said it was average. But as you know, one is not enough to register a score, hence the dotted lines. But the audience reviews were 10,000 plus, and holy Jesus, was it a mixed bag from one end of the spectrum to the other, with some going, this is awesome, I love this movie, all the way down to, oh my God, this is the worst piece of shit I've ever seen. So with a very broad range of reviews, I think 46 is actually a fair call. I think it really covers the spectrum there. So look, with that, when we round it all out, and we've only got the audience to go off, it gives us a score of, that's right, 5 out of 10. Now look, I never actually saw this movie when it first came out on DVD. I was kind of glad that I actually didn't. as from all accounts this was actually supposed to be an introduction for people to the Iron Man character before the 2008 motion picture with RDJ, and I'm not sure what they were thinking of, as this film is so different to the movie. You would almost be forgiven for thinking this was two different characters. I have rarely, and I mean rarely, seen a time when you reimagine a well-known character and people actually like it. Those things that you change are usually the things that either make that character that great character, or they're the things people actually like about that character. And that's what's happened here, is they've tried to reimagine Tony Stark's origins with this mystical twist, and let's say it crashes harder than one of his early prototypes. This film should have delivered a compelling blend of ancient legends versus modern tech, but the film stumbles through a flat, sluggish, and ultimately forgettable storyline that, to tell you the truth, if I think about it now, I can barely remember most of what went on in this movie. Actually now, yeah, come to think of it, I can't think of it. But if you ask me about what happened in Iron Man's 2008 movie, and mate, I haven't seen it in many years, I could tell you what happened from start to finish. And how is that, you ask? Because the live action movie is compelling and interesting and keeps your attention, where this film is not. The Invincible Iron Man movie is a textbook example of a wasted opportunity. With a strong character like Tony Stark and a mythical premise on the table, this movie actually should have been something memorable. Instead, it's a dull, slow-paced slog that somehow manages to make Iron Man feel boring, which is a remarkable achievement in itself. It really is. Look, anyway, for that, this is definitely not going to be one of my favorite Iron Man movies, that's for sure. So for that, I'm going to give this a score of, 4 out of 20. So for availability, I'm going to put this down as a 2 out of 5, as look, it is not hard to find anywhere. I think you can still find it in retail outlets if you look, but you'll definitely find it online. Now, as far as collectability goes, this is probably more a 2. Like, it's not a must-have. It's a good little piece for the collection, especially if you're an Iron Man fan or a Marvel fan, but otherwise, I wouldn't worry too much. The average price, you are looking at somewhere between $3 to $15 for a DVD. So look, this is a cheap little one that you can pick up. Let's go to the scorecard and see how this one shapes up. Now, for the final score, we get a grand total of 35 out of 100. Damn. Oh, geez, that's worse than I thought. Anywho, I can't say it wasn't deserved. So, look, if you're an Iron Man collector, then this is a nice little cheap one to get in the collection, that's for sure. But look, if you're not a completist or an Iron Man fan, then I'd say give it a miss. You won't really need it. Trust me, you won't have any case of FOMO on this one.
I'll give it a miss, too.
Next week on the show, The Storm Riders on DVD. I've had some requests for some more foreign films, so we're going to check out this one from China. Thanks for watching.